All right, what is up? In this video, I'm going to cover how we build cold email lists that actually get results for cold email in 2026. Now, for the past few years, and probably even before then, all people used to do was really just go to Apollo, go to some huge database, and just pull the emails, whatever quality it is, then import that list into their cold email sequencer. Now, that hasn't worked for a long time, and that will continue to get more and more saturated. And the problem with these big databases is that everyone goes to them. So if we can find any way to be unique and maybe use some of those databases, but then also just from A to Z make our list much higher quality, we have a much better chance of getting more leads, getting more bookings, keeping all other variables the same when it comes to copy and infrastructure. So this is how we do it. Well, number one is we've got to pull a big company list. That's the first thing. I always recommend building lead lists at the company level first, and then once you have those companies confirmed, you can pull the decision makers at those companies with various tools. So I have a little table here for, depending on what niche you serve, how to actually build those lists. So for ecom, StoreLeads is the best database for e-commerce. We found 100% when you're looking to target Shopify stores that have certain apps installed or whatever other criteria that you have for targeting e-commerce. StoreLeads is 100% the best. For B2B software and agencies, we actually use, for a general big search, we actually use clay.com. We use Clay's company database, which is actually a multi-layered database full of like Apollo, Lusher, Crunchbase. I think it's a mix of a lot of different databases compiled into one. So it actually is quite high quality for a bulk database. For local businesses, trades, Google Maps API. So just scraping Google Maps with various API. Pretty easy to do if you just look up Claude Code, or really you just need to know where to go, and then you can get AI to help you actually set up scripts to actually scrape Google Maps. For product-based B2B, we use things like Thomasnet, Compass, Europages, depending on what is sold by the company. So for example, in manufacturing, that's Thomasnet is a supplier directory where we can find B2B manufacturers. For Europages, we can find a whole bunch of different companies. But those are for product-based B2B, so not service-based. For software, there's also another options, G2, Capterra, and then also we have Crunchbase and many other softwares that we can use, but I would recommend for software sticking to Clay for now. Agencies and dev shops, we can also use Clutch. There are multiple databases, this is just a few options. And then of course there are creators. So if you use Appify, you can scrape YouTube creators on Instagram, and that's the best way we found to set up scripts to scrape those types of leads, because those aren't in your classic Apollo databases, Clay databases, because those databases are predominantly LinkedIn data. And these creators, for example, if you want to target, like, if you want to do the growth operating and target like coaches with a big following, those aren't going to be on, things like LinkedIn. They're going to be, or like Apollo, for example, they're going to have to be scraped from like Instagram tools. So that's what I recommend. Number two, just clean the list. So drop anyone you've already contacted, or drop dead domains and duplicates. If you've already built a list, this is just for the next list that you built. But for the first one, you can really ignore two. Then the next thing is score for ICP fit. Now you can do number three in Clay, or you can do it in Claude Code with an MCP, or just inside of Claude Code with a certain script. So inside of Claude Code, we have something called terminals. And what you can do is basically prompt Claude Code to build you Python script. It will do all the installations that you need. And what you do is you connect your OpenAI key or Claude API key, whatever AI that you're using. And what I recommend doing is scoring all of the companies that you've pulled. So for example, if I'm doing a Clay search, there is a company description. So what we do is we always score the company description from 0 to 10, because when you pull a big list with the generic filters, Clay does have very good filters, but for things like Apollo, even if you're going to go and get your list from Apollo, you really need to do ICP scoring, because a lot of the filters are mismatches and false positives and false negatives. So you need to remove any of the fluff companies, any of the companies that aren't actually your ICP. So when we do our cold email lists, number 5 has to be, to get a score of 5, you have to at least be a digital marketing agency doing some form of marketing. The higher the score goes, the more specific the agency and what they sell and who they sell it to is. So like if someone does email and SMS marketing for e-commerce brands, that's going to get like a score of 10, because that is very specific and very, in our niche, and we can help them with outbound. For more generic agencies, when it gets like just we do web design or we do SEO, those get like a score of 6 or 7. And then if the profile is just like digital marketing and content, then like that will get a 5. But then below 5 is basically not actually someone that's a company that's in your ICP at all. So it's just a totally different category of company. And so we leave all of those out. So yeah, you keep 5 plus out of 10, and then you just literally scrape the rest before we move to number 4, which is the contact finding step. You can do this with cheap AI models. So if you want to use OpenAI, you would use GPT 4.1 mini or 4.0 mini. If you want to use Claude, you can use Anthropic. You can use Haiku 4.5. If you want to use Gemini, some people use Gemini. You can use Gemini Flash Lite 2.0. And basically, you want to use something that's quite accurate, but also relatively cost effective at scale. So it costs around $20, $30 if you want to score a big list of companies, which is what I recommend. Then finding a decision maker. Now, this can get technical, but the first thing is if you've got your list, no matter where you've got your company list from, I always recommend putting it inside of clay.com to essentially do a find people list. So what that entails, I can just open Clay as well. Once you've got a big company list, you can either import that company list into Clay to find the people, or you can use its native feature. So like either way you go, if you have a list of companies, you can always put those inside of Clay, and you'll get around 15 to 20% of the decision maker titles that you're looking for with companies found. So this find leads feature here and find people, what you can do is when you're running a Clay table, you can actually import the company domain, pretty simple, and then just filter for certain job titles, and it's going to find companies at usually 15 to 25% of the companies that you imported. The crucial part of our list building is actually what happens after that. And this is part of our Done For You service. It would take probably a while for you to set it up on your own. But inside of Claude Code, we have layer 2 and layer 3 lead contact scraping. So basically, any companies for which these big databases found no companies at all, found no contacts at all, what we do is we use Serpent.dev, we use Scraper API, and we use ChatGPT as a combination to basically Google the company, read their top results, and then like the about and team page, and it basically pulls the name of someone that is a specific decision maker that you've filtered for. So we only want to target founders, owners, and CEOs. So the GPT script is built to only find the first name and last name of those founders, and the GPT pulls the name, their title, and the confidence of the score. And this actually recovers a ton. This is actually where the bulk of our contacts come from when we have a company list. And the awesome thing about this is you're reaching out to people. You're going to end up reaching out to people that not many people are reaching out to comparatively when it comes to Apollo, because it's a much more robust way of finding leads. So like, again, you can find owners, CEOs, and founders that aren't even on like Apollo or any of these Clay databases, for example. Then all you do is you run a sequential email waterfall to find the email of that contact, which still works very well, and you get a hit rate of 50 to 60% overall. I'll get to the email waterfall in a second. And then layer 3 is actually Clayagent. So running Clayagent is quite expensive inside of Clay, and it costs action credits. Clay's new pricing made it more difficult to run bulk rows. So what you want to do is we still want to only run this part inside of Clay, because Clayagent has its own web scraping proxy feature that we found that actually is basically all the ones that layer 2 didn't find. Layer 3, we run on Clayagent, we get a few extra thousand contacts because it runs on only what's left. So we still use OpenAPI key. It walks LinkedIn, JS sites, directories, recovers 40 to 45% of what is left from what layer 2 didn't get. And then overall, if you've got a huge company list, this number 4 in this whole list building process that we use for all of our campaigns, all of our clients, 80% of companies you'll actually have a contact for. Most databases, you only get contacts for like 20 to 30% of the actual companies. So like this is very, very high quality. You're getting more volume and you're getting higher quality contacts. So it's very good. Then email waterfall. Once you've basically compiled all these decision makers, you've done confidence scoring, you've done ICP scoring from before, you basically got a whole bunch of contacts that we just want to find the email information for, so we can verify their emails, add them to the sequencer as a lead. This is our waterfall. We use ICPs, Trikit, Find Email, and Row, Full Enrich, and then finally Clay. We've done a lot of testing on like individual email finders. This is the cheapest and most essentially effective overall hit rate that we can get while keeping it as cheap as possible. So Full Enrich is amazing, but it is quite expensive, and we run it after the first 4 because ICP is super cheap, Trikit super cheap, Find Email is very cheap, and Row gives us some extra emails. And then what we do is we only run Clay at the end when 1 to 5 haven't returned an email yet. And that is because we don't want to waste Clay action credits. You could run all of this in API inside of actual Clay, but we run 1 to 5 inside of Claude Code by connecting the API keys and MCP of all of these different email finders. And then only once we've done that do we put the rest of the few thousand companies which have a contact, which don't have an email yet, to find the email. And so we don't waste as many action credits on Clay, which is a bit of a scam, that, in my opinion, with Clay. Like, it's difficult to get a lot of emails. So like, I would just recommend doing stuff in Claude Code or some other software if you know it, because the action credits really make it like impossible without paying a lot of money to run inside of Clay. You pay per the email found, and then you just verify everything. So we have Million Verifier and we have TriKit. So we run everything on Million Verifier. We keep the OKs, the catch-alls and unknowns. We check through TriKit, which is an awesome verifier for catch-alls and unknowns. Then we keep valid or valid risky from TriKit. And then, yeah, so we're doing some double verification. And then all of those leads that we've gotten, they're basically leads that we can add to our cold email campaigns. We can add personalizations to the certain copy that we use. And this is just how we get thousands and thousands of leads for our campaigns and our clients. If you want us to build a list like this done for you and do it within a day or two to be able to launch your own campaigns, then there'll be a link in the description where you can book in a call with me. We can take a look at your current acquisition system, and I can show you, how I think we can help some more clients through cold email. Other than that, if you want to have a go of this on your own, you can definitely do that. And I would just recommend having the Claude Code session open, pay for the max plan, and definitely need Clay, and just prompt Claude for anything you're confused on, or you can also ask me any question in the comments. But I'm looking forward to making more videos, and I hope this was valuable for you guys. Cheers.